I am trying, and I mentioned this last week, I am trying, and it's taking more effort than I thought. I'm trying to join in the enthusiasm, the up-tempo feeling that seems to be trying to take hold in this country with the nomination, actually, of Kamala Harris and Tim Walz. I think they represent, I think the proper term right now, or the one that's being overused and making me crazy, is the term inflection point. I'm going to avoid that. I think they represent a turning point. You know, some of the phrases that media come up with and then beat the hell out of, it bugs me. Anyway, I think the Harris-Walz ticket is a turning point in this country because they're offering up the politics. It's kind of personified back in the day by Hubert Humphrey. Remember him? Minnesota senator, vice president under Lyndon Johnson. Humphrey was, back in the day, what was called the happy warrior. Remember that? All right, you may be too young to remember it. I remember it. It was kind of goofy back then. I mean, the late 60s was no time to have some jolly-looking senator and vice president prancing around like he was on pogo stick, talking about how he's a happy warrior. But that's the way it was. And had it not been for the Chicago riots that came about as a result of a very intense anti-war movement in this country, Hubert Humphrey possibly would have been president instead of Richard Nixon. But that was then, this is now. So not that Tim Walz reminds me of Hubert Humphrey, not in the least. But what I am hearing over and over again is that, from national media, what I'm hearing are reports that the Harris-Walz ticket represents something that the Trump hillbilly ticket couldn't possibly represent, and that is kind of a happy feeling. Come on, let's solve the problems. Not a goofy happy, like, hey, there's nothing wrong. There's a lot of shit wrong, an awful lot of things that need to be corrected, and I think we all understand that. But they're not going to be corrected under another filthy Donald Trump administration. They'll be made worse. Not only that, it'll be the last presidential election that this country will have in a very long time. So, yeah, it's very catching, this attitude that Harris and Walz put out there. And I think that feeling, the fact that it is viral, is evidenced by the huge crowds that show up, the huge enthusiastic crowds. Not people that wave their fists in the air and have scowls on their face and are 99.9% Caucasian. No, not those crowds. I'm talking about crowds that look like America, that look like old and young and black and white and Asian, Latino, all sorts of people. And when I look at those crowds that show up for Harris rallies, that's when it starts to, this viral upbeat feeling starts to infect me. So I hope it's having an effect on you. I really do. I realize it's difficult to sustain a feeling like that, especially given the horrific news that pounds at us every single day, every moment of every day. I understand. And if you're a regular listener to this podcast, you know that when you come here to hear the Malloy podcast, you're going to hear some pretty weird shit. I get that. Some pretty negative stuff. And like I mentioned last week, I hate doing it, but it seems like, it seems like so many of the items, articles, reports that catch my attention are those that that we have to be warned about, because they carry with them, these stories, these articles, these reports, the potential for real destruction or pain or suffering in this country. And most of them are political, although a lot of them are environmental. Hey, so here we are. That's my little chat, my little off-the-cuff chat for Monday, the 12th of August, 2024. Hi, Truth Seekers. Mike Malloy here. You know, the Progressive Voices Network brings you commercial-free commentary from today's leading progressive radio hosts and pundits, like me, Mike Malloy, 24 hours a day. I'm not your typical old guy from the 80s or the 90s talk radio host, and Progressive Voices is not your typical talk radio network. It's a listener-supported nonprofit with no corporate control whatsoever over our broadcast. So hosts like me, Mike Malloy, are free to rant and scream and carry on about whatever we like. We're often controversial, but we're never boring. Weeknights, 9 p.m. in the East, 6 p.m. in the West on the Progressive Voices Network. Always progressive, always on. I'm Mike Malloy. Keep it lit.